What is photosynthesis? Energy that plants get. What else could you say photosynthesis is? Food for plants, the process for where or how plants get energy. All right. It's what a plant does. All right. So y'all were all right. So what is it that this plant does? It makes oxygen for us to breathe. It makes glucose for energy for us. And it makes all of its own materials. So what does it need to do all these things? Water, carbon dioxide, light, and the pigment chlorophyll. Glucose and oxygen. Now, do you remember how many waters there were? And how many carbon dioxides? How many oxygens? And how many glucose? There's only one molecule of glucose, but it has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. But it's only actually one molecule. All right, we're going to look at the structure of the plant today. And you've got the formula, so this is the chemical reaction that's going to happen. We're going to look at the sun, or the light energy, because that's where we ultimately get our energy from. The sun, when it shines down, it looks like white light. It appears to be white light. Actually, white light is all the colors. That's the reason with the prism, you're able to separate white light into Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and indigo. White light is actually all the colors shining down. It's called Roy G. Biv. All right, think back to your physical science class. I know it's been a long time. Does one color have more energy than another? Light is waves. They all have waves. The color depends upon how many waves there are in a certain period. So this is called the visible spectrum. If you'll notice, there's little bitty waves down here by indigo. And the waves get longer or bigger as you get to red. In the same area, if you look from here to here, there's more wavelengths than if you look from there to there, isn't there? So this has higher energy. Since there's more wavelengths, it has higher energy. Corey, talking about a rainbow, why we see a rainbow, the rainbow colors are Roy G. Biv. And that's because the sunlight is being reflected in the raindrops just like a prism. So it separates out the white light. So the raindrops act like a prism. Energy is in these light waves, okay? And indigo and violet is going to have more energy than the reds and the orange. So what we see, when we look and we see colors, what we actually see are the reflection off of whatever the light waves are hitting. All the other colors are being absorbed. All right, so let me repeat this because this is a new concept to y'all. What we see is colors that are being reflected back. When you see red, red is being reflected back to your eyes. And all the other colors are being absorbed.
Science, please! The wonderful world of color. no such... We live in a colorless world. Ah, color is an effect produced in our eyes and brains by light.
White light consists of different lengths of light waves. Each wavelength produces a different color sensation. A banana looks yellow because its surface absorbs all wavelengths except yellow, which is reflected back to our eyes. In the same way, a cherry looks red because its skin absorbs all colors except red. And vanilla ice cream gives the illusion of being white because it reflects all wavelengths of light.
So, color doesn't really exist. Have a very real effect on us.
Reflection is represented by valleys and absorptions by the peaks in the following graphs. So, colors are determined by the reflection. If you see red, that's what's being reflected back, and the others are being absorbed. Now, reflection's represented by the valleys. So what's being reflected is the valley, is the area that's low. So red is being reflected back, and all of these colors are being absorbed in to something. So this would be a graph that we'd see, a visible spectrum graph that we would see when something is the color reddish orange. So we're going to look at this section. So when we see a plant and we see that it's green, that is what's being reflected. All the other colors are being absorbed. So they have different kinds of chlorophylls or pigments that are absorbing the different wavelengths. So if we see green, what colors are being absorbed? All the rest. All right, so this would be the absorption spectra of the different photosynthetic pigments. So there are three kinds of pigments that we're going to look at: chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and carotenoids. So first let's look at chlorophyll A. Remember, we see what's being reflected. What's being reflected is in the valley. So, in chlorophyll A, what color do you think chlorophyll A would kind of be? You've got kind of a combination of yellow and green, except for purple and the bright red. So it ends up looking, when you have blue and yellow, what color does it make? It made green. So chlorophyll A would be green. Now, let's look at the other one. Now, in chlorophyll B is very similar. Probably a darker green. All right. Now let's look at carotenoids. Now what do we have reflected here in carotenoid? We've got yellows and reds. What does yellow and red make? Orange. Carotenoid, just like a carrot. That's the kind of pigments that you see in carrots. In carrots. Mm-hmm. The peaks of the graph represent the colors that are being absorbed. The valleys are what are reflected. So we're going to take a look at the plant. All right, we're going to get closer and closer to this leaf. Here's the leaf. Now we're going to take a section of the leaf. Here is the section, the cross section of the leaf. Remember when we looked in the microscope at the leaf? And what we saw was down in here. These are the chlorophylls right in here. The chlorophylls are what make the plant green. All right? They are going to be what is absorbing all of the light waves except for green. And we look in specifically into the chloroplast. Now we're going to take the chloroplast.
On every green leaf, there are millions of submicroscopic little one-man factories, turning out more sugar than all the ships and railroads in the world could carry. And the head man of each factory is a little green molecule called chlorophyll, the only engineer with the know-how about this still secret life process. Chlorophyll is so small and so secretive that not even the most powerful microscopes can spy on him. Here's the way we think he works. The veins of the leaf bring him water from the roots. From the air, he grabs a molecule of carbon dioxide, CO2. He puts a water molecule and a carbon dioxide molecule together. Then he reaches for a piece of sunlight, and this is what we don't quite know, how he adds this sunlight.
And I'm not going to tell you either. You can darn well find out for yourself.
Quiet. Piece by piece, he adds more sunlight to his sugar cake. And then he pulls out an oxygen atom from the mixture and releases it into the air.
And the Russians didn't invent me either. I invented myself.
And then he takes some salts that come up in the veins, sprinkles them over the mixture for icing, and puts the completed sugar cake into a waiting artery. Out of this sugar or sunshine cake, the tree makes leaves, trunk, roots, and fruit.
This is what it actually looks like. If everybody would open up their paper, we're going to do a practice run of drawing this. So you have these stacks of pancakes. The actual stacks are called granum. The stacks of pancakes are called granum. So that's the stacks of the thylakoids. Each individual one is just one thylakoid. Just draw several stacks in here. Now, inside and in between, all inside and in between, is the stroma. The stroma is like the syrup. All right, it's the fluid. So the stroma is like the syrup of it. It's the fluid that's going to be carrying the gases, the carbon dioxide into the plant and the oxygen out of the plant. You'll also notice there's like two membranes here. There's an inner and there's an outer membrane. So you've got the chloroplast. Now we're going to take and magnify the chloroplast. And there are stacks of chloroplasts called granum. Now we're going to take a section of one of the thylakoid membranes. Remember, just one of these is a thylakoid. But this would be like one part of the flattened pancake. All right? Notice how the membrane on that thylakoid membrane looks a whole lot like a cell membrane, doesn't it? You've got the phospholipids with their tails. You have some of these integral proteins. Here's an integral protein here. All of these are little integral proteins. And remember, those integral proteins were used so either as recognizers, so different parts of the cell could recognize. Also, though, it's like it has a lot of them have an area that something can travel through it. Hydrolysis, hydrolysis. And we said oxygen diffused out of the entire cell. So oxygen is going to leave the cell. What's the other part that we had left from the water? Yeah, the hydrogen. So you have these hydrogen ions that we said we ended up making a high concentration in there. Now, think back in physical science. We talked about hydrogen. It had a proton and a neutron inside the nucleus, and it has an electron on the outer edge. That electron that travels around comes off of the hydrogen, and it is going to end up traveling through chemical reactions all the way through these different proteins. This is how energy, part of the energy, is going to be transferred from sunlight. This is the thylakoid right here. The one stack. All of that's going on. All of these chemical reactions are going to be happening on the thylakoid membrane and then in the stroma, inside the chloroplast. Biochemical pathway. When you've got these chemical reactions that are occurring, you've got reactions, two reactants come together and they form a product, like hydrogen and oxygen coming together and making water. But then it would be like H2O or water reacting with COOH. All right, so, and then they would end up making a new product. So you just have this biochemical pathway where you've got all these reactions, chemical reactions going on. ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ADP, adenosine diphosphate. NADPH, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. I want you to draw a chloroplast. Sunlight's going to shine down and hit the granum. We have ADP and a phosphate come in and they're going to chemically react in the light reaction. When ADP and a phosphate chemically react, out pops ATP. You also have NADP+. That's just the name of a molecule that's going to chemically react in our light reactions. And it is going to come out NADPH. Still storing the energy. We're trying to see how we get sunlight energy to eventually we end up making sugar in the plant. You've got ATP where energy is stored and NADPH where energy is stored. You've got water that's coming in and oxygen leaves. ATP and NADPH go in, they transfer their energy here. It's called the Calvin cycle. They're going to transfer their energy along with carbon dioxide. All right, and then out comes what? Sugar. And what is sugar also called? Glucose or organic compound.